Welcome everyone to S1E1, a show where we watch the very first televised episode of various sitcoms and we discuss them. This week, we will be discussing Dinosaurs. Dinosaurs, which lasted 4 seasons on ABC, a total of 79 episodes. We're talking about episode 1, the Mighty Megalosaurus, which aired on April 26, 1991. So to start off, I'm your host, Jay Gags. I'm here today with my buddies, Gordo, Ferg, Joe, and Nick.
Hello.
So,
Howdy.
Hello.
Okay, so to start the show, right?
Before you actually start, I would just like to point out that this show is almost exactly 2 weeks away from being 30 years old.
Oh, wow.
I could have sworn this was done in the 80s, not the 90s.
It's funny remembering it being on live, how weird that is to be like,
Yeah,
we're
right?
getting on the wrong side of time here, boys.
Okay, so to start the show, we have the intro, right? And it gives you this early, like, dangerous dinosaur vibe at first. And you just see kind of like the point of view of the dinosaur walking and like going through a dark forest. And then it just, boom, cuts to the classic Honey, I'm Home. And then it's just kind of a various clip ensemble of, from episode to episode, montage rather. And we see that this is not a typical show about dinosaurs, but it is more of a standard family sitcom that just so happens to be about dinosaurs in like a prehistoric time.
Yeah.
I think the intro does a perfect job of immediately letting you know what the show is and what the vibe of the show is.
I do too. I liked it.
I think it's hard to not be immediately hooked by the premise and by how good everything is. I mean, it's hard. I would say the two things to say right away from this before we get into anything are you could never do this now. It would be CGI. It would be a nightmare, or it would be the Geico cavemen, and it just wouldn't work.
Geico,
You guys are not going to like me this episode.
But
Nick's not a fan.
so early on, I'll say just from the intro alone and then cutting to the first scene. In the first scene, you just see them watching television. So it's DNN, play on CNN, and he's watching the news. So you're already seeing that, like, okay, they live in prehistoric times, but they're blurring the lines with like what makes sense, what doesn't. Like they've created their own world with technology that exists for them. But right off the bat, I'm thinking the animatronics are phenomenal. I think they did a great job with.
I do agree in that aspect. Yes, they were very well done.
I think the animatronics are great, and I think they did a really good job of like blending those worlds. And I think the sets, like, I just think it worked. I just think right off the bat,
Henson, man.
Yeah, Jim Henson Creature Shop. And I just think right off the bat, you just know what this show is. And that's something that I liked from just 10 seconds in. They've established everything right away. From the intro to the opening shot, you know this world. You know exactly what this show is going to be.
One thing I kept thinking of is how indebted they were and how indebted we were at that time to the first Ninja Turtles movie.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Like this is,
and that's right on the
that's A
right
to
on the
B
heels
on
of
this
it.
one.
Yeah, you're talking only a couple years difference, and it's the same, shop that made the same, animatronic puppets. So
All I could think about while watching this episode, or the show rather, was this is Roseanne, only it's not Roseanne as the main character, it's him. And
Please finish that. I want to go after you.
it's to the point where like the kitchen is laid out the same as Roseanne, with exception to like the refrigerator. And it's the we're broke. I can't afford any of this stuff. My kids are crazy. Like it's the same feel. He dresses the same as Dan Arnold. Like it's the same flannel. He still works the manual labor job. He comes home, he's pissed off, and it's the same shit. It's
but that's
the same
what it's
thing.
supposed to be. It's supposed to be a take on the typical, like, American family sitcom, which,
Right, but it was already done, and just because it's dinosaurs,
Roseanne didn't invent that, though. It was like a take on the honeymoon.
I understand that.
Yeah, I was going
but
to say it's more the honeymooners than anything.
See, to me, it's All in the Family.
yeah.
So they did
if
their
you look at the
job.
cast,
See, we
right,
all
so you've
saw
got-
something different.
Well, Sally Struthers is in it, right? As the daughter, just like in All in the
yeah,
Family.
like literally, yeah.
The boss is Sherman Helmsley from All in the Family, and his best friend is clearly trying to look like Stretch Cunningham, who is Archie's best friend in All in the Family. So I totally agree. It does feel like Roseanne. I never thought of that. I think it's a great observation and probably more accurate to the time. But I think that there's definitely a huge debt to All in the Family.
Yeah, no, that I never thought of that side of it either, but that does make a lot of sense too.
You don't think he was more Ralph Cramden, and the best friend was more
His friend. I think that's true, but I think they made
Ed
him
Norton.
look so much like Stretch Cunningham too. But then again, I think Stretch probably looks like Ralph's friend too.
even had
God,
the
what's his
same
name?
voice. It was
Yeah, but I just
Oh, he
think,
didn't
like,
have as much as the buddy boy sort of thing.
when you look at the show and you're seeing what this is, like, it's also an animatronic show about dinosaurs. So you're not expecting the same like level of depth as like some of the other American family sitcoms. Like it's supposed to be a parody of that, but set in a very unrealistic world. So I think as far as that goes, like you want to see them and think of those shows. Like that's the intent. Like they want you to think that.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, true.
I also found it very interesting and a strange way to do things. The very first episode was a flashback story. Like,
yeah, it was a flashback.
Instead of establishing the characters and then doing something like that later down the line, but
it was to kind of like explain it, and it kind of gave you the origin. It was like an origin story through flashback. So
it was also a morality play, which was weird.
Yeah,
like, I don't remember it being such a morality play, but it really does the whole thing with we'll get to it, but who ends up being his boss's assistant there. Like they really build the world as like a very wholesome, do the right thing sort of, not like the movie Do the Right Thing in any way, but doing the right thing.
Yeah. So we've met, within a few minutes we meet the family. Like we said, there's Earl, there's Fran, and then they have their kids, Charlene and Robbie, and then the baby. And then, throughout this episode, Earl is now explaining to the baby essentially how he came to be, he being the baby, like his origin story. And like, that's what's kind of setting up the whole premise for, what the show is going to be.
Yeah.
So now we know that. But like a funny note right off the bat, it's like a world where dinosaurs have televisions and electricity and they dress, but still pants are not a thing. Pants do not exist in the world of dinosaurs.
They Donald Duck it.
Yeah.
Winnie the Pooh, yeah. I did enjoy. I thought it was relevant to this group of people that they were, the two things on TV they watched were the news and wrestling.
Yeah,
like, that seems to be like a bunch of people I know.
Yeah. I think I had we talked about this last week too with Friends, but even more so with this show, I had a really hard time seeing this through the eyes of somebody in 91. In 2021, I was having difficulties, just saying, oh my God, this looks fucking stupid. You know what I mean? Like I had trouble with that.
This one for me against the Friends thing was, I've seen this before a bunch of times. I watched it all and it was new. Jay, I think you bought the DVDs when they first came out, maybe in, 2000 something.
I have the DVDs. I have them on VHS. I have some of them on VHS.
Right. And we all watched them again. And this was hard for me to take away episodes I love. We listened to the album a couple times a year, the Dinosaurs album. So like it's in my brain way more than it should be. So this was a tough one for me to sort of disassociate.
And actually, and I'm sorry for not doing this sooner, but has anyone not seen the show before? Or everyone had seen it? Is that established?
Yeah, I think we've all seen that.
Yeah,
I think this was great for our age, right? So we're all pretty much born 85, 86. Neighborhood, right? So this is a show about little animatronic dinosaurs and again kids that came out when we were 6-7 years old. So I think that we were right in and it was it TGIF?
I don't know if it was.
I don't believe so.
I believe this was a TGIF show for a while. It wasn't like a mainstay show, but I do think it had a stint there. I'm not 100% sure, but
I don't remember really.
Yeah, I don't think we were paying attention. I mean, we were. I mean, right? I can still sing the song, the TGIF songs. Like I know it's all in there, but I remember changing the lineups around a lot.
I don't want to alienate the listeners too much, but Earl sounds like Jay's dad. Can we agree on that? He sounds like Ricky, 100%.
I don't think I heard that because I think I would dislike the show.
I don't know. I didn't get that.
But,
I didn't pick up on that, but now I'm going to think that because I'm I'll put a rewatch episode and think of that now.
Maybe the aloofness, but I did think it was good. Like, so basically right from the beginning, when Earl starts to talk to the baby about like how things happen, he also does get into how the world came to be the way it was. It was kind of this, like, we're living in this world we're experiencing this world that's kind of a midway point between the dinosaurs we came to know and then like our world. So there was a time like we'd be less educated about them kind of modernizing before they were extinct. So he had mentioned that they wanted more things and they created shelter for themselves and homes.
They also gave us a year.
603 BC.
I also love too, they make the joke that why are the years counting the other way?
Yeah,
that was my favorite joke.
I thought that was really good. And I wrote that down too, because
I wrote it down too.
It was a very clever joke, and it was like, what are we counting down to? And like there was like that, like kind of like almost looked at camera, like
that's very Jim Henson Muppety, like breaking the fourth wall. Like
the way that Earl and I forget his wife's name. What's his wife's name?
Fran.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's right. Earl and Fran. The way Earl directed that question to Fran was like, "Eesh!" Like it was almost like they knew what was going to happen.
Yeah, it's a little
which is very honeymooners too. That's honeymooners right there.
Well, I was going to say, if you remember the first opening scene there where they're like, oh, there's going to be an asteroid that's going to wipe out all of
Actually, never
civilization.
mind, yeah.
And then they hand the newsman another letter, and he goes, oh, never mind, continue on. I think that kind of foreshadows it too.
He's just like, oh, that's good.
Like,
So,
okay, great, we can have dinner.
It didn't take too long after that.
Talk about the dinosaurs and why they live in houses. They almost made it sound like a social experiment. Like, we thought maybe we'd try to live in houses and have kids. Like, they sort of really weirdly say that it wasn't like, I don't know, manifest destiny bullshit or something like that. That it was like, we made a choice to change what we were doing just to see what it was like, which I thought was pretty interesting.
What did you guys think? It was pretty soon after they start cutting to Earl at work, and you kind of see like it's a created job. Like tree pusher isn't like a modern job, but it's very like alike to being a construction worker in today's world. They were just kind of clearing fields for what we don't really know, I guess, where they were going to add their houses. But I thought it was like, again, like we said, it's very stereotypical American family sitcom. He has a 9-to-5 job. You meet a couple of his friends. Now we meet his boss. It's the typical like aggressive boss. He's shy towards them. I like it. I mean, I guess it's tough for me to pretend I don't like the show so much, but just early impressions, like everything is hitting for me like one after another. I think everything's working.
You know what caught my
Sherman
eye?
Helmsley as Mr. Richfield, which I think is just perfect casting.
That was ball out of the park. Yeah, nobody was ever going to recreate that guy.
Yeah, it's just he's
the
the best voice in the world. We're only a couple years shy from Mr. Nanny, his shining moment. I love too that they cut the roof. Did you notice they cut the roof out of the office so that his head spikes can fit through? But I laughed so hard at that.
I noticed one of those little things too is that Earl. Did you notice that Earl's lunchbox is a cage?
Yes.
It's not just a lunchbox. It's
a
little
great
cage,
little thing
because he shows all his food's live.
The attention
And that
to
goes back
detail.
to the fridge earlier in the show too, when you see them like, every time they open the fridge and all the hands are trying to reach out and like kind of like escape.
Or the frozen dinner. The block of ice with arms sticking out of it. That's so good.
Or the infomercial that the dinner that escapes is watching, and he's like, oh, hey lady, you might want to go look at this, and it's a cage that they put on top of a pan so that the food can't escape out at the top of the cage. I thought that was funny.
So yeah, I thought like, we see him at work and he asks for a raise, and I think they established his wage was $4 an hour, which isn't even that crazy because I think I want to say
62 million BC. That's a decent wage.
Yeah, that's not bad because like there was
adjusting for inflation.
There was still early 2000s. There was still plenty of states that were like offering very little more than $4 an hour.
I made $6.75 at my first job.
Yeah, so not bad considering the time gap.
But they do establish too that he's been there for a very long time. Like what was it, like 30 years or something? He was there. So
because they establish he's older because he not to jump ahead, when they find out that she's pregnant or with egg, that he's going to be in his 60s when the kid's in high school. So they're not like a young family. This is like a surprise baby.
And that goes, they got the 12 and I think, was it 12 and 15 or 14-year-old?
I believe so. I have it written down. If I have it correct, I think Earl is 43.
Here's a question. Has anybody here ever had to ask for a raise? Because that's a big scene in the show, right? And I thought that played well because asking for a raise is kind of a nightmare. I've only done it a couple times, but it's not fun.
I've worked at a lot of places with very standard structure. Your wage is based on your time of service, and there's not much wiggle room. Not as relatable for me.
I've been fortunate enough to just, kind of get my raises the same way. So it might be coming soon, though. So I'll let you know how it goes.
Yeah, let me know how it goes. I had to do it a couple of years ago where I made a presentation. I had note cards. I brought in the HR person. And
this is why I think we should be able to drink High Life at work. Click.
To be fair, at that point, that was, I think, actually a prerequisite every day. So, but yeah, it's tough. It's a weird thing to ask for. So it's relatable, right? If you've been in that situation, I like the relatable aspect of this show. We don't have, Ferg has been in a different situation than us in that capacity, but if we don't have, none of us are like big family teenagers sort of thing. So it's hard to relate to all of it because it's based on, I think, or it's two people who aren't in a situation we're in. But I think the little things like that, like asking for a raise or like being afraid of your boss, really played well.
And I like that they kind of established the friendship with with the friend too, because his friend was kind of like, yeah, you should go ask for more money.
Right.
Like he didn't make this decision on his own. He was coerced by his buddy.
Yeah,
right.
But basically, his attempts to get a raise don't go well. Basically, his boss gets in his head and convinces him to instead of getting a raise, just quit.
Yeah, which is a weird psychological move. It's not what you expect in a show like this, to have the boss be that level of like a psychological genius. Usually he would just be like the blow your top, because the boss is set up to be like the captain in a police movie in the 80s, right? He's like yelling and pounding on his desk.
But as aggressive as he was, he instantly just got in his head and just basically made him, walk out of the job.
Yeah, which showed you, kind of the psyche of Earl, too. You know what I mean? He's not an aggressive type. He's not confrontational. He just wants to show up every day and, go home at the end of the day.
And he's established as being, I don't want to say simple, but there's not a lot of like depth to who he is. And that goes back to a lot of like stereotypical American sitcom, like I keep saying, that they're mimicking. A lot of those shows, especially of that era, when you really look at the late 80s, early 90s sitcoms, the dads were always meant to play as the dumb role for the most part. Like they were like the comic relief dummy. And that was very much apparent in this show with Earl.
And I think that's emblematic of the time too, is like white collar around then too was much more popular than it is now. You know what I mean? Like everybody was white. I'm sorry, blue collar, not white collar.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's a strange thing that's changed a lot, right? Like now it seems more of a, you go to school, you go to college, you get a white collar job. Whereas that wasn't necessarily the case back then. And I think everyone here has done probably a combination of all those jobs. So it's an interesting thing to see the sort of breakthrough of both of those things. Have we mentioned the Flintstones yet?
No, not on this.
There's a weird Flintstones. I mean, this is very much the Flintstones, right? It's the live animals for dinner. But then also he's playing Dan Connor to a degree, right? They're playing Roseanne. And then Dan Connor plays Fred Flintstone in a similar type movie, 2 years later?
Yeah. Well, I looked this up because I wanted to make the Roseanne reference, but this show came out in 91 and I was like, there's no way Roseanne was before 91. And it is. It was 88 was the first episode of Roseanne.
Yeah, Roseanne starts earlier than you think.
I didn't think I was going to have the argument because I figured it was after, or they had done it after Roseanne, or before Roseanne rather. So I was surprised to see that was 1988 for Roseanne.
Somebody watched Roseanne recently, the older episodes, the first few seasons.
Mm-hmm.
It becomes a way different, way more relatable show to you in your mid 30s than it ever did watching it as like a kid. It's mind blowing.
To move forward with this story. So Earl basically quits his job. Now he's going home and has to tell his wife that he just quit his job. And upon doing that, finds out that his wife laid an egg, is pregnant essentially.
I love that.
Yeah, I did too.
Yeah. So I thought that was all set up good. And like, I like the little scene where he's questioning if it's his. He's almost like, I'm too old. Like, it might be a dud egg. I think he said to her. So he holds the egg up against the light, and you just see the silhouette of the baby just within the egg already before it. Before
I like the joke he made too. Is he told Fran, he said, "Well, we had 3 duds before," and she goes, "No, we had 2 duds and what's his name? What's the kid's name?
Robbie.
We had 2 duds and Robbie." And he's like, "Well, yeah, you know what I mean."
So I thought that was good. And then, so I guess like he was overwhelmed with all of that. And then questions basically all the stuff that was talked about earlier to his son when he was talking about how the world got to be the way it was. And then wanted to go back to the forest to see if the old way was the right way to just exist in the forest. And it was like, so he's at a really low point. And it's like, this happens when you're watching the show, and it's an animatronic show about dinosaurs, and it's upbeat and goofy, but then like he's hitting this point of life reflection and is going off into the forest. It really, like, I think this show did a really good job of appealing to multiple audiences. I think it was a show that, like we said earlier, for our age demographic, it was perfect to watch this as a kid. It was like so upbeat and fun. But I do think if you're an adult, this was an easy show to watch because it did mimic a lot of the themes of like other adult sitcoms, and I did think it was good family television. I think it really worked in that way.
I think that's giving it a little too much credit, if I'm being honest.
I think that's what they were going for. I think it worked a little. I mean, I think it worked, right? I don't know if they do it so much anymore because I don't watch shows for kids so much. Occasionally if our nieces and nephews are here, or they were before all this stuff, we'd watch stuff, and I'd pick out the jokes in like a SpongeBob or a Paw Patrol or something where you're like, oh, that's for me. That's not for the kids. Like they're saying something, whatever. This show, I think, did a good job of trying to make everybody have a thing.
Yeah, it's not so much like a wink and nudge joke for you to pick up on. It is show that the structure of it and the storylines are there for an adult to also follow along.
That said, you can always find something, even if that's not the case. And this is the scene where he's in the woods and the little fella says, just devour me and get it over with.
Yeah.
That I immediately went to sexual mode and just laughed for like 5 straight minutes and we had to pause it.
So I did
just-
like that. I'm sorry.
No, I was a little actually confused at the end of this episode. I don't want to jump to the end, but we all know what happens. Essentially, from what I can tell, is Earl killed this dude's family, and then this dude gets him a raise.
He forgives him for the murder, which is a weird.
Yeah, it didn't make sense. It's like you just ruined this guy's home. You probably killed his family, but you didn't eat him. So now you're gonna give him a raise because he's now the new.
He was trying to put on
stupid.
He was trying to put on a brave face too. I mean, like as we'll get into it, but like as he gets picked up towards Earl's mouth, like he mimics this like, oh, I'm depressed and like just kill me, get it over with. And as Earl goes to pick him up, and as he goes to take him closer to his mouth, you can see him like kind of go back a little bit and tremble and like really kind of get the fear of God, so to speak, scared into him. And then he's like, yeah, never mind.
Right. So I want to jump back a second now to just based on what we were just saying. We talked about earlier, Earl goes into the forest to, reflect on the old ways that life was lived. Pretty early off the bat, isn't really too happy with what's going on there and kind of regrets his decision pretty quickly. But within a few minutes of being there, he sees his old dinner that escaped his fridge earlier. We talked about how the food was alive in the fridge. So it just so happened their dinner for the night was able to escape. Come to find out later, the dinner was in the same part of the forest Earl goes to. So now his dinner and him get to talking, and where Earl is showing up sad because of all this stuff and pressure in his life, the dinner, it starts talking about how he lost his whole home because of all the tree pushes, which happens to be Earl's job. So it's very likely that he was the guy who did it. He hasn't seen his family. He doesn't know if they're okay. And he has like nothing to live for. So even though he escaped earlier, he's now embraced, just go ahead, put me out of my misery, eat me. And with that, Earl's realizing that he actually does have a lot to live for. His life isn't so bad. He has a home, he has a family, and there's a reason to want to be there. So again, I just think they did a good job tying in that story for me. And maybe it's biased because I just enjoy the show, but there was a lot there and there's some depth to that. That's an actual lesson, there's appreciate what you have. And that's a lot for a children's television show, which is why I think it was more a family show. I thought it was a good message.
So that begs the question, why does it have to be rubber dinosaurs though? If they could tell the story, because I don't disagree with you.
Because real ones aren't around anymore, Nick.
This idiot.
Yes. No, but I mean, like, I feel like even in 1991 that looked stupid.
Well,
and I just can't
thought they looked amazing.
I never
dumb it
saw
them.
I want to talk about this scene in a second.
Suits. Like I always, even now, I saw them as dinosaurs, and I know they were fake, but
yeah,
it's like I never just was like, oh, look at those suits, look at that. Like
that's all I could see.
Reflect on it was like amazing animatronics.
Yeah, like
I thought they did a good
like,
job of just constructing that whole world and kind of making you lose yourself
like
in
I said,
that
right
world.
off the bat, I think they established that really well. And we talked about it got mentioned earlier. It's the same people who did the original Ninja Turtles movies, and the same thing when I watch that movie, I'm not thinking about how it's guys in rubber suits
because there's other people in the movie. It's not all Ninja Turtles. Like if it was all Ninja Turtles, that would be stupid. You need humans there to.
Well, humans do show up.
Yeah, there's humans at the end, man.
But can we talk about this scene? I can't remember the character's name, but I've got a lot of problem with this one scene.
Arthur,
right?
Dinner, yeah.
Arthur is a traitor, right? He comes on super strong with a super green ecology. You knocked down these trees. You killed my family. You're ruining this for everybody. You're destroying the world. And you get, because there's some heavy-handed parts of this show, right? Where you're seeing this and you're like, okay, they're making a point. I wonder what this is ultimately going to go to. He doesn't eat him. So you're getting all these messages. But what does he turn into? This guy killed my family. He's knocking down all the trees. What am I going to do? I'm going to go work for the company who's knocking down all the trees and then give a raise to the guy who killed my
that's what I'm
family.
saying. It doesn't make any sense.
Did he say that he killed his family?
No, and that's the
I
thing.
don't remember
he didn't.
saying that. Like,
it was established that he hasn't seen his family. He doesn't know if they're okay. It's very likely that they were his dinner or someone else's, but I think it was more established that Earl in that company, not even Earl specifically, but the We Say So company is possibly the reason Arthur doesn't have a home. So for him to go to work
to the
for
point
We
where
Say
he's
So-
okay with dying, and then
Well, sort of okay. He kind of lies
come
about
out
it,
of
but then he
that.
goes and
He
works.
lies lies
for
about
them.
it.
He's working for the enemy. This is like
No, it's a power dynamic change. Now he's the boss of the people that would destroy.
And now he's going to be able to acquire a new home with the money he's getting from the job that destroyed his old home.
and a new, younger, better-looking family.
Yeah,
and he's not going to get eaten because he works for the dinosaurs.
Yeah, so not only so he lost everything, and now he's going to have the very people that destroyed his home be the people who pay for his new home. So that works.
That's bad. That's my point of view on this. Is all of that is bad, very, very bad. It's funny. It's good. The show's fun, but that's a weird scene.
As much as I give it credit for
disagree.
doing a good job of the balance beam of having it had a lot of morality issues that tied in with like actual human shows of that era. There's also an element of this is a show about dinosaurs.
Exactly.
Like
you kind of need to pick a lane, and I don't think they did.
Yeah, I found it to be a good balance, but I don't know. I didn't see that kind of flaw. I think, but when I watch a show like this, I appreciate when it gets real, but I do give it the pass when it's a little off because it is an off world. It gives them that, to me, it gives them that excuse.
Yeah, they took a very cliche subject, which is the family sitcom, and they put it in another time, with dinosaurs. It made something we've all seen a million times new. And I think it accomplished that.
We talked a lot about in Friends that there was too many characters. I think this had too few characters because you're missing two very vital people in the story, Adam and Eve.
So yeah, basically, I mean, you're really following this whole journey through Earl. They don't even do a lot to set up the characters of the rest of the family in this episode. So you really don't know anything about the kids. You don't know very much about the wife.
All you know is about Earl at this point.
Yeah. So, I mean, him and the wife had a little bit of a argument before, right? Because they wanted to spend some money and she wanted new pots and pans and he wanted a 90-inch television, which, even in today's
and a tutor for Robbie.
We're not quite there. 90-inch televisions they're not often spotted in stores. So
yeah, it's 2020. If I walked into any of your houses and saw a 90-inch television, I would be blown away.
Keep in mind, though, they're dinosaurs, so they're way bigger than us.
That's
so
true.
90-inch isn't big for them.
Perspective. I never even
too.
thought about scale.
Yeah,
I was going to bring up scale when talking about inches.
So one thing I noticed, though, between seeing the show as like a 5-year-old and seeing it as a 35-year-old, is as a kid, I love the baby. As an adult, I fucking hate that baby.
I fucking
when he
hate that
came
baby.
out of the thing, started talking, and
Why does he talk? Why?
Stand him.
Yeah, I don't know.
fast
He also,
talking.
in keeping tradition with the Gaglione family, he reminded me of Chris.
So I didn't see my brother and father when I watched this show. I didn't get that image, but as soon as the egg hatched and we discover baby's character, like from moment one, it's like this is the comic relief of the show. Joke after joke, very fast talking, very like witty for his age. I don't know, the baby character doesn't hit as much as an adult as it probably did as a kid, because I just think you now relate to a different person more. But even even as a kid watching that, I would think that Robbie was the cool one.
This is another one where it's hard to disassociate yourself from it, because when we were kids, that catchphrase was everywhere.
Yeah.
Like, I'm the baby, gotta love me, the frying pan stuff, like that was everywhere as a kid.
Not
so
the
it's
mama.
hard. I'm having a hard time not being like, oh, we were so inundated with that.
Yeah.
It was a movie or a TV show. It was songs. It was McDonald's toys. Like, it was just so present.
Yeah. So I thought for first episode, they did a good job like establishing the world, but I do think that they lacked a little bit in maybe introducing you to the rest of the characters.
And that's why I wouldn't have done the flashback for the first episode. The baby, even though I hate the baby, he wasn't in the episode until the story parts and the end.
They tried establishing the universe with the flashbacks. I just don't think they did a good enough job.
I think you're right, Ferg. I think flashbacks should have been episode 3.
Yeah,
give us a couple weeks with these people.
Well, yeah, because they could have because it wasn't really intended to be like a flashback episode, right? It was more just him narrating the story of the origin, and we don't even know if
the thing is though, why though? They could have just showed that all as the episode. Right. Why did it have to be a story? Like, why couldn't the episode have been him just showing how the baby came? And
and if they
saw,
I think if they had done that and they went that route, you get to cut out those scenes episodes of him flashing back and forward, and that gives you a little more time in the episode to build other scenes and maybe talk about other people a little bit more. So that might have been the way to, you could have essentially had the same episode, but included more characters had you not made it a flashback.
Yeah, agreed. That looks like it should have been either in the second episode, third episode, or later down the line to come back and say, this is your birth story to the baby versus making that the first episode.
What threw me off of this whole show that I'm kind of weirded out by? Just paper. When you think of like the Flintstones, it's like he writes his check, he signs his name. It's always chiseled on stone.
Yeah.
He comes back in with a check, like a yellow paper check that Fran tries to put into her pocket very poorly. So you can see the actor freaking out a little, like, did that go in? Did that go in? And they kept the take, which I really enjoyed. Also, R.I.P. Jessica Walter. That's a bummer.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Forgot about
But it
that.
seems like his check should have been a big piece of slate.
Well, what's his job? He pushes down trees. What's trees made out of? Paper.
Trees are not made out of paper, but I think the point is,
What are paper made out of trees? Shut up.
what I think, I mean, are you ignoring the fact that he's wearing a flannel shirt and watching a TV? Like, what?
True.
Like I said, I think
Meet me in the middle.
Full English.
and I said at the beginning of this episode, I thought they did a good job establishing what this world was. Like, it's a merger. Like, there's a compromise. There's suspended disbelief here. It's, I don't know, you just accept what you're seeing, there's no specific logic like that. You're not going to be like, this isn't of this time. So paper can exist in a dinosaur world because they also have televisions. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, do we speak English, or do they speak English, or do we speak dinosaur?
That's a great question, actually.
That's not the species, all right?
that's like a common tool of a lot of, like, there's like things that are supposed to take place in other countries, right? And we just, like, whenever the movie's made, just in English because it's just easier for us to understand.
Because America.
The baby was
Yeah, but they don't speak with a dinosaur accent, and that really throws me off and kind of takes me out of the show.
Did we establish what part of Pangea this happened in?
I don't think we did.
Is it more in our sector?
They
Also,
did
Pangea
actually
shouldn't have been
say.
around.
I was going to say
Taking flat Earth into context.
He does say, "Oh, I've never been to Europe before. I'm 43 years old and I've never gone to Europe."
I do
before."
remember that. Yeah.
It's true. That's a good
Yeah.
joke. I also really love the I dated a T-Rex in high school. That's a great line.
Something I thought about watching it was the animatronics the animatronics probably cost more than hiring actors.
They are actors. They're animatronic suits.
Okay.
Yeah, it's people in the suits, but
But it's not the actor in the suit. They're voice actors.
No, it depends. Yeah, the voices you hear are not the people in those suits.
Right.
And typically to do that, you have someone in the suit and then usually an additional person controlling a remote that's moving their face. That's not the person in the suit.
Right. I'm just saying
And then the actor who's voicing it.
Right. So you're paying like fourfold for when you could have just made a show about people. And then I looked up the show and it's pretty much why he got canceled.
Okay, I was going to ask you, did you look up? I'm trying not to look things up before I watch them, but
So
I imagine
that
the
was
cost was astronomical.
That was my thought
Asteroidonomical.
process. Yeah.
But that show made so much money early on. Like we said, like how marketable it became. And like, I don't want to get too ahead because we're really trying to focus on this first episode here, but I don't know. That's a risk you're taking, right? When you make an episodic television show that's going to involve that much animatronics and like set design, like obviously the cost is going to be high. So you're really banking on that.
Well, the network needed a show that would be a better show for less money. And that's why it was canceled by the Big Bang Theory.
Yeah.
And I get the fuck out of here, Jay. I also don't imagine Sherman Helmsley was not making a lot of money in 1991 either. Like he was he had to make a ton of money to do that.
No, he wasn't, because that was right. I think Amen was still on.
I think at the time, and
Amen was a great show, and that was a pretty big show. I think Jack Hay was on
television actors didn't make.
I thought you were going to bring up The Nanny.
Television actors didn't make what they come to start making like by the end of that decade. Really, like when other shows like Friends and Seinfeld, like when those actors started getting like $1 million an episode, like when those shows take off, like that's not quite where we are yet. We're almost there, but like Sherman Helmsley, as good as his career was, he's probably getting a decent wage, but they're not breaking the bank on him either.
No, people like that, actors like that, are making more money doing like Amex commercials and stuff to supplement.
Honestly,
they're not getting millions of dollars an
sets
episode.
Probably cost more than the actors and the costumes.
Yeah, and it's probably simple though. I'm sure they're like actually pretty small sets overall because there's not a lot of movement. So it's a few like static sets. That
they needed sets big enough for dinosaurs, Jay. There's definitely
that's true. Again, I forgot scale. So scale's an issue here.
So what you're saying is they weren't being paid a lot. They're working on the scale.
But
an industry joke for all you people out there.
Overall, I don't know. Like I said, I think the show works in a lot of different ways for me. I think, like Nick, to what you were saying earlier, if you're going to do this show, why make them dinosaurs? Why not just make it a regular show? Because that's the line they toyed. That show without the dinosaurs, and like you change all the jokes, it doesn't work. It's too simple.
Yeah,
so that show with the dinosaurs is the Geico Cavemen show, and we all saw how that went.
It was amazing, and it got Shirley.
God,
ladies and gentlemen, that's the only fan of the Geico Caveman show. Jay Gags.
Because I don't know if I'll ever get them to allow me to have an episode of Cavemen down the line. Like I would have to be like I'd have to probably like win a bet or something where I got like.
Oh no, Jay, we'll give it to you.
Oh yeah, we'll do it.
No problem with shitting on that show for an hour.
So, but when we eventually do Cavemen,
Season 3,
I'll watch it with like an open mind.
Have you just
and
met
a
me?
fair heart, and I want you to see the show for what it is.
Okay, well,
it is. Like Dinosaurs, just a great representation of a different time, although it's modern times in Caveman.
I would rather watch Encino Man if I'm watching something about Caveman. I'm just saying.
But Jay, you'll push us so hard that we'll finally have to cave, man.
I think I think Dinosaurs, though, like I said, it didn't have the depth to not have the dinosaur element to it.
Not at all.
But I think it was close enough.
You just write different jokes is all you do. Like, I don't know.
I think it suffers from trying to go in too many directions
the same
at once.
plot with aliens.
I
believe they did on TGIF later on. But
I think there are so many shows that if we really started thinking about like every American family sitcom that were barely more developed than this one as far as the context of the writing and stuff, like, you know what I mean? Like there are, when you compare it to like a Roseanne or the Honeymooners or any of those, like you're talking about, or All in the Family, you're talking about like some of the most, acclaimed, well-written shows, like, that stood the test of time. But you can remember for every one of those, there's 50 sitcoms that barely made it out of a season that were like incredibly dull, that just had whatever like dopey fat like
but this show barely made it out of a season.
No, 4 seasons. It did 4 seasons.
No, it did 4 seasons of this show.
They're rebooting it too, by the way.
It did 4 seasons, and they had I keep mentioning it because it's stupid, but I love it so much. They put out an album, and it is fantastic. They were big enough to put a record out when
I was positive this thing went 1 season and died.
So at the top of the episode, I brought it up, but I'll say it one more time: 4 seasons, 79 episodes.
I don't think you said that.
You can review the tape later. And if I haven't said it before, I'm saying it now, but I did just say it for the second time.
Kevin James's The Crew just did 8 episodes and will probably be canceled. And this is the world we live in, 72 episodes.
You want to talk about only one fan in the world? The one fan of that show in the world is sitting on this panel, and that's Ferg.
No, he's not.
But he watched the whole thing.
Wait, The Crew?
Yes.
I
watched it all in one night. It was
Me too. I watched the entire thing, and I hated every episode, but I couldn't turn it off. I did the same thing with The Ranch. I fucking hate The Ranch.
That was so bad.
But you like Dinosaurs, though, right?
I love Dinosaurs. I'm probably, when we're done recording this, going to go right back to it and finish it.
Yeah, so, I mean, we can start, anything else about this show you guys wanted to bring up? Like, were there any things that, it's a world of dinosaurs in a semi-modern world, like, is anything else flagged your attention that you wrote down that you want to talk about, or did we basically cover it here?
If Joe's going to bring up paper, I'm going to bring up the fact that dinosaurs and humans never existed at the same time, and I hate that they ended the episode like that.
I was going to say the same thing.
Oh, so
what was up with the hula hoop and all that stuff?
It was a weird gag.
I thought that was a clever joke. It was showing they were evolving, but they weren't.
Yeah, so sort of touch base on what they just said. Basically what happened was, episode pretty much ends with Earl and the baby looking out the window and talking about how dinosaurs are basically going to be the top, species for all time. And in the distance, we see cavemen, really unevolved at the time, pretty mindless, and they roll their eyes at them basically to be like, yeah, that's never going to take over. And it's another wink to the camera, because we obviously, here we are today, dinosaurs no longer exist, we're here. But goofy joke to sign off on, but I don't know, I'm a fan.
It gave me a good laugh. I was already laughing at the wink to the audience. Oh, he invented the whale. And then
I mean, I laughed. I'm not going to say I didn't laugh.
All right, so to end off then, let's go down. Let's see if anyone would green light or cancel this show based on the first episode? Or at the very least, are you interested enough to see a second episode? Let's start with Gordo.
Green light 100%. I know it's expensive, but that whole world, the way that they constructed it, like the fact that they are dinosaurs. I know that you guys were saying, oh, that's cheesy. It's just another American, sitcom, but it's just dinosaurs.
Not you
I don't
guys,
know.
Nick.
It works. It works for me. It works for me. I love that stuff. I love the construction of it. It's so well done. Yeah, 100% green light for me.
Ferg, where do you stand?
100% green light here too. And anything Jim Henson works on, man, green light the shit out of it. I love the effects of it. I love the setting. It's a great show. It's pretty funny. Like I said, after we finish this, I'm probably going to go in my room and watch episode 2. So yeah.
Joe, green light or cancel?
Green light. It's weird. It doesn't make any sense. It's good, but it's not very good, but it's good. I think it's interesting. It hits all the marks of all the sitcoms that you love. It's weirdly modern. It makes no sense at all. Green light it.
And we'll go to Nick.
So I would be lying if I said I wasn't entertained at any point. I was definitely, a few of them caught me. I liked obviously the animatronics and the sets and stuff. They were really nice. At the end of the day, though, I could not care less about seeing another episode of that show after watching it again. It wasn't for me. I mean, I'm not gonna shit on you guys for liking it, but it just wasn't for me.
Oh, earned.
All right, well,
So I'm canceling that show.
So I think I've been
Canceling your
very
ass.
clear with how I feel about this show. I absolutely loved it. Just based on this first episode alone, like I said, I think they established the setting great. I think it was a great balance. I think it was something that you could watch as an adult, as a child. Absolutely want to continue to watch it. So 100% green light, no questions. To sign off, I just want to say again, thank you everybody for watching the show. We'll be back next week. In the meantime, feel free to go to S1E1pod.com. You can find the links to all our social media there. Be sure to subscribe to this channel, and we will catch you next week. Thank you so much.